In the history of modern aviation, there is one question that haunts the world more than any other. How does a nearly 300-ton machine, equipped with the most advanced tracking technology in existence, simply vanish? On March 8, 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 didn't just crash, it disappeared without a trace. For years, the world has looked at the ocean's surface for answers. But the truth of MH370 lies in the silence between the data points, in the unexplained maneuvers, the faint satellite signals, and the unanswered questions about what happened in that cockpit. Today, we deconstruct the timeline, the science, and the theories behind the greatest unsolved mystery of our time. This is a story about 239 people, mothers, fathers, children, friends, who boarded a routine flight and never came home. Their memory deserves both truth and respect. The night began with routine perfection. It was just past midnight in Kuala Lumpur. The Boeing 777-200ER, a marvel of safety and engineering, roared into the darkness, bound for Beijing. On board were 239 souls, 227 passengers from 14 nations, and 12 Malaysian crew members. In the cockpit sat two men. First Officer Fariq Abdul Hamid, a young, promising aviator on one of his final training flights before full certification, and Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah, a 53-year-old veteran with over 18,000 flight hours and an impeccable safety record. For the first 40 minutes, the flight was unremarkable. The aircraft climbed to its cruising altitude of 35,000 feet. Systems were nominal. The night was clear. At 1:19 a.m., as the aircraft approached the edge of Malaysian airspace for handover to Vietnamese air traffic control, Kuala Lumpur radioed their final instruction. The response from the cockpit was casual, professional, and, as it turned out, final. "Good night, Malaysian 370. Those were the last words the world would ever hear from the aircraft. Approximately 2 minutes after that sign-off, the plane's transponder, the device that identifies the aircraft to civilian radar, stopped transmitting. On air traffic control screens, MH370 vanished instantly. But military radar tells a different, more troubling story. Data released by the Malaysian military reveals that the plane did not explode, nor did it plummet into the sea. Instead, it did something inconsistent with the filed flight plan. It executed a sharp turn to the southwest. This was not a simple course correction. The aircraft flew back over the Malay Peninsula, traveling along the border between Thailand and Malaysia, a region with limited radar overlap between the two nations. The flight path passed near the island of Penang before the aircraft banked northwest up the Strait of Malacca. Then, somewhere over the Andaman Sea, it turned again. It pointed south, toward one of the most remote and desolate stretches of ocean on Earth, the southern Indian Ocean. After that, radar contact was lost entirely. For days, search and rescue teams scoured the South China Sea, believing the plane had crashed near Vietnam. They were searching in the wrong ocean. While the transponder and radio had gone silent, there was one system the crew could not easily disable. The Boeing 777's satellite communication terminal continued to send automated signals, electronic handshakes, to an Inmarsat satellite stationed above the Indian Ocean. These handshakes contained no voice or data, but they confirmed something remarkable. For nearly 6 hours after the disappearance, the plane was still flying. Engineers at Inmarsat headquarters in London performed an unprecedented analysis. By studying the Doppler shift, the subtle changes in signal frequency caused by the plane's movement, they calculated the aircraft's general direction of travel. The results pointed to a chilling conclusion. The aircraft had continued flying south, deep into the southern Indian Ocean, until its fuel was exhausted. The precision and intentionality of the flight path led some investigators to focus on those inside the cockpit. Someone, it seemed, knew exactly what they were doing. Attention turned to Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah. While officially described as a respected professional and family man, media reports raised questions about his personal life. There were unverified claims of marital difficulties and speculation about his mental state. However, it is important to note that family members firmly disputed these characterizations. Colleagues described him as dedicated and professional. The official Malaysian investigation found no definitive evidence of psychological disturbance, financial problems, or any motive that would explain a deliberate act. Yet one piece of evidence continues to fuel speculation. On Zahari's home flight simulator, a sophisticated setup reflecting his passion for aviation, investigators recovered deleted data. Among the files was a flight path that bore similarities to the presumed route of MH370, a track into the remote southern Indian Ocean with no programmed destination. Some interpret this as evidence of premeditation. Others argue it proves nothing. Pilots often experiment with unusual routes on simulators. The official investigation called the finding inconclusive. The debate remains unresolved. If the deliberate act theory is correct, one question remains. How could a pilot maintain control without interference from the cabin? One possibility investigators considered: depressurization. At high altitude, if the cabin lost pressure, passengers and crew outside the cockpit would lose consciousness within seconds due to hypoxia, oxygen deprivation. The aircraft would become unresponsive to anyone except the person at the controls. This theory, while supported by the flight profile, remains unproven. We simply do not know what happened inside that aircraft. The absence of physical evidence from the main wreckage has allowed alternative theories to persist. While investigators and aviation experts have largely rejected these scenarios, they remain part of the public conversation surrounding MH370. The cargo fire theory. Some point to the cargo hold. The manifest listed not only fresh mangosteens, but also 221 kilograms of lithium-ion batteries, a type of cargo that has caused fires on other aircraft. Could a catastrophic fire have incapacitated the crew, leaving the plane to fly on autopilot until fuel exhaustion? While possible, this theory struggles to explain the deliberate turns and the precise flight path. Fires typically cause erratic behavior or rapid descent, not 6 hours of controlled flight. The shoot-down theory. A persistent but unsubstantiated theory suggests MH370 was shot down, either accidentally during a military exercise or intentionally to prevent it from approaching a sensitive location such as the U.S. naval facility at Diego Garcia. Witnesses in the Maldives reported seeing a low-flying jumbo jet on the morning of March 8th. However, these sightings were never corroborated by radar data, and the satellite evidence consistently points to a crash site thousands of miles to the southeast. Investigators and aviation authorities have found no credible evidence to support this theory. The cyber hijack theory. Some have speculated that the Boeing 777's flight systems could have been remotely hacked, overriding the pilots and steering the aircraft to a predetermined location. This theory gained traction after it was discussed by historian Norman Davies and others. However, Boeing and aviation security experts have firmly rejected this possibility, stating that the aircraft systems cannot be controlled remotely in such a manner. No evidence of external interference has been found. From unverified reports of ringing cell phones to debunked sightings of wreckage in the Cambodian jungle, the theories are numerous. But the satellite data, the most reliable evidence available, consistently points to the southern Indian Ocean. The mathematics of the satellite data are precise and unforgiving. Engineers calculated that MH370's final position lies along a curved line across the Earth's surface known as the seventh arc, the location where the aircraft was when it sent its last satellite handshake. At 8:19 a.m. Malaysia time, more than 7 hours after takeoff, the plane transmitted a final, partial log-on request to the Inmarsat satellite. Analysts believe this signal occurred when the aircraft's engines flamed out due to fuel exhaustion, causing a brief power interruption that triggered the satellite system to attempt reconnection. Without engine power, the autopilot would have disengaged. The Boeing 777, now a glider with no thrust, would have begun to descend. Depending on whether anyone was still conscious at the controls, the aircraft may have entered a steep, uncontrolled dive. Impact with the water at high speed would have been catastrophic. The fuselage would have broken apart, scattering debris across a wide area before sinking into depths exceeding 4,000 meters. In the years following the disappearance, pieces of the aircraft began washing ashore. A flaperon on Reunion Island in July 2015, wing fragments on the beaches of Mozambique, Tanzania, and South Africa. These pieces confirmed what the satellite data had indicated. MH370 crashed somewhere in the southern Indian Ocean. But the main wreckage, the fuselage, the flight recorders, and the remains of 239 passengers and crew, has never been found. The search area encompasses some of the most remote and unmapped ocean floor on Earth, including deep submarine canyons and underwater mountains that had never been surveyed before. Two major search efforts, covering over 120,000 square kilometers, found no trace of the main debris field. The ocean has kept its secrets. In 2018, the official Malaysian investigation released its final report. After 4 years of analysis, the conclusion was frustratingly inconclusive. The disappearance of MH370 cannot be determined with certainty. The report could not confirm whether the aircraft was deliberately diverted, nor could it rule out mechanical failure. It could not identify who was responsible, if anyone, for the aircraft's change in course. It could not explain why the transponder stopped transmitting, or why no distress call was ever made. What remains are theories, probabilities, and an overwhelming absence of answers. Was MH370 the result of a deliberate act by someone in the cockpit? A catastrophic systems failure that left a crewless aircraft flying on autopilot until it ran out of fuel? Or something else entirely, something we have yet to imagine? Until the flight recorders are recovered from the ocean floor, we may never know. What we do know is this: 239 people, from artists to engineers, from toddlers to grandparents, boarded a routine overnight flight and never reached their destination. Their families have lived for years in an agonizing limbo, denied both answers and closure. The search may resume one day. Technology improves. New data emerges. The ocean floor is vast, but it is not infinite. Until then, MH370 remains aviation's greatest mystery, and a solemn reminder of how much we still don't know about our world. Good night, Malaysian 370.